I keep calling pins tails and tails pins. Yeah, I'm just a tiny bit dyslexic. Hello, welcome back to the shop on my channel. Journey with me, if you will, down the rabbit hole of doing half-blind dovetails on the Leigh Jig, something I haven't done for about 18 years. So I'm way out of practice. But I want to give you a little bit of history. So the first Leigh Jig came out in the 1980s. It was the TR515. It worked well. It had the same functionality of this as you did dovetails by flipping, by doing one side of the fingers or the other side of the fingers. But with that one, you had to turn the jig all the way around. So you did the tails on one side, you flipped the whole thing around, and then you did the pins. The biggest improvement in the Leigh Jig from that, and I've got a D3, which is a very old one. We bought this in the mid-90s, is you flip the fingers instead of the entire jig. And like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do half blinds to emulate the case of the chest of drawers and the drawers themselves. So to that end, I've got some 3/4 inch stock, which it'll be like this, top and side, which I'll attempt. And then I've got some rabbited fake drawer fronts and some 1/2 inch stock to emulate the drawers, so I can practice those. Now, when I got the jig, originally it came with these two little bits here, starter bits, beginner bits. And then eventually I broke down and bought the Leigh set, which is kind of a blistering display of dovetail bits. We've got big, littler, and through dovetails. These bits here are also for through dovetails, but for tiny, tiny ones. Look at this one. Teeny, 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 teeny one. And these bits over here, one of them is missing because it's in the router, are for doing half blinds. And the engineering and design and mathematics that went into this thing are pretty cool. There's a lot of better explanation than I can give you on their website. Now, as far as doing a tutorial on how to do half blinds, not really. A Cut Above Woodworking has a really brilliant video in detail on how to do half blind dovetails, and he does a little tiny drawer about this big. And he goes into detail. It brings the camera around and shows you all the stuff. My problem here, obviously, is I got a small space here. I can't really bring the camera back here for much. But the most important thing, for me, anyway, my opinion, is the router. So, I dedicate a single router, and it's only for the Leigh Jig. The important thing about the router is that the collet, and the collet for the router itself are concentric. This has to be concentric with this, very precisely, so to get nice, tight dovetails. So, oh yeah, this comes in handy too. A marking gauge. I'll show you that in a minute, what I'm going to do with that. So let's go and set this up to do a set of half blinds. The business end. Now, the bit I'm using, you look at this chart, the lower portion of the chart, it gives you the bits to use for the depth of cut you want for half blind dovetails. Now, this is 3/4 inch stock, so I want a 5/8 depth on the pins and on the tails, so that they're buried. The dovetails are buried behind the front of the workpiece. You don't see that. Or in this case, the side of the chest, you don't see that. And to start off with, you set your pin width, which I've done here. I set my pin widths, and since these are open, these fingers are open to a gap, you have to bridge those portions, which I've done with small pieces of wood. I have ordered the plastic that you get from Leigh that just snaps into place when you cut it to length and bridges it very nicely. So this is all set to go. I have my first workpiece, which is going to be the tails. And as far as the marking gauge is concerned, I set the marking gauge to 5/8 of an inch with my dial verniers, and I scribe it. So that gives me the point where I want to set the bit, and I mark it with a pencil to make it more visible. Now this comes in. I drop the fingers down, bring them forward. There we go. And they're laying on the backer board now. So I bring this piece up so it just touches the fingers and lock it in place. So that's ready now. Now, the gauge on top here, here's a picture of what I'm talking about. You set that to the thickness of your wood, which in this case is 3/4 of an inch. And that's the inner gauge here on the green that you see in the picture. Now, that's ready to go. I'm ready to make the cuts. But there's a couple more steps. First off, we've got to set the depth of the router itself. And that means that the cutter has to come and split that line in half for better accuracy. Okay, we're going to adjust the router now to intersect that line right there. So I got the light over here and I got controls over there, so this is going to be interesting. But you'll note that the router bit cutter bottom is above the line. We want to split that line with the router's bottom. So I moved the router bit over so it's almost, this flute tip is almost touching the wood. And now all we do is crank the router down slowly. Until we split that line. And that's just about it right there. And then we close the router up and it maintains that spot right there. So that flute right there is splitting the line in half. But there's a little bit more detail on the setup, so talk about. So one of the things I added later on, which came with the D4 jigs, is this magnetically mounted dust collection that slides with the router across the fingers. And we'll place that in place. Now this is connected through an ISO switch to a dust collector behind me. So when I turn the router on, the dust collector comes on. Now here's one of the little tips you got to know about using this. These arms here that hold that in place, which comes with the kit, see that? You flip up and down. So you got to pull that up so it's tight. And do the same thing over here. So now you've got a level plane between the fingers and this dust collector. So now, bring the router up and it's going to go around the other way. Now the first cut is going to be right to left, which will be a scoring cut along the line, so I won't get any tear out in this direction. And once the scoring cut is done, then I can go and finish making the tails. So now I'm ready to make the cuts. My audio system's going to go nuts, of course. I'm just not going to turn it off or turn it down. A little background noise in the video. So let's do this thing, as they say on TV. Another nice thing about having this is I can roll the router out of the way and turn it off and not have to worry about having to lift it out of the jig. So let's see what we have here. And it looks good. I think I want to make another pass. I think we're good. We'll see. Double check this again. That's another beautiful thing about this jig, is you need to, you can go back in and do things again. Let me try something here. Okay. That's the start. Now we have to do the pins. So I removed the backer board because the pin board is going to come in from the back this way. Side note, when I go do the sides, cabinet, for the chest of drawers, they're going to have to go out this way. So I have to build a little stand out here to match the height of the Leigh jig to hold that wood. The top and bottom will just be down here, and it's just basically cut and rotate, same thing as cut and rotate everywhere, but more on that later. So now I bring in this up against the stops. I've got a stop block here just to stop it where it needs to be. Okay, that's locked in place. I'll remove this stopper block, which was the pin board, actually. Now, what's going to happen here is going to route between these Y parts here. And what that's going to do is going to create the pins, but they're not going to go all the way through because it's 3/4 inch and I'm cutting 5/8. So I'm going to leave 1/8 of an inch at the bottom that's going to hide the tops of the ends of the tails. Again, I don't have to make a lot of changes this time. Just put this back in place so it runs freely. Double check this for being up where it is, so it's nice and ready to go. I'm not expecting this to be perfect or to fit the very first time. This is why you do this. You make several of these until you get it all to fit correctly, and then you work on your final workpiece. Here, and the cord behind there, and let's give it a hole. Give it a whirl. If you look at the video by a Cut Above Woodworking that I linked in the description, you'll see that he had his one and only career woodworking miracle when he doing the demonstration. The dovetails fit perfectly the very first time. Good luck with that. So there's the tails, the pins I mean, and I got the exposed, the 1/8 of an inch here to hide the end of the tails. So let's put this in here, clamp it down, grab my tailboard, and see how it fits. That is almost perfect. No, I'm not going to say that. It's not almost perfect. It's just there. I mean, it's tight, and I know how to fix that, but let me just give it a couple of taps. Okay, I want you to note something, that the side is proud of the pin board, and that simply is fixed by moving the fingers away from me a little bit. In this case, if I move the fingers a 1/16, that probably will do it. So let's give that a shot. All right, so I want to move it in a 1/16 of an inch, which is easy because this is marked in 1/16 of an inch. And I keep hitting my microphone, making microphone noises. All right, that's tight, that's tight. Let's give it a whirl. Are you crossing your fingers? Are you crossing your fingers? I do see another adjustment I have to make because I've got a gap, but that's what I've got. 2 tries and I've got it. There's a gap here. I got to figure out how to get rid of that, but that represents the side of the chest of drawers and the tops of the bottom of the chest of drawers. Of course, the dovetails will probably be larger and farther spaced apart because it's going to be a 20-inch piece. But there we go. That's the half blinds yada yadas. Not bad. That's almost perfect except for that one little spot, and I got to figure out how to fix that. All right. So next, same thing. I've got the workpiece in place now, and I scribed the line. Now in this case, we're going through 1/2 inch stock, So it's the dovetail depth is 7/16. So I'm using the bit specifically for 7/16 depth, which I think is the 120 bit. Look it up, I guess. You'll see it in the, look at that chart again. So I drew the line with the pencil to give us some definition. Now, when I put the rabbited drawer front in place here, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but this part of the inside of the drawer and this drawer side don't line up. They're off. Let me see if I bring the camera over. Closer look. Now, you can see that these stops are aligned with each other perfectly for doing through dovetails. For doing half-blind rabbited dovetails, not so much. The new jig has a machined-in stop that raises over the shoulder and stops and hits right here and lines everything up perfectly. For the older jigs, there is a bit of a trick you got to do, and I'll show you what that is to line everything up. What you do is take a piece of stock that's the exact same depth as the rabbet, and you take some double-sided tape and you stick it right here against the stops on the jig right here. And then you take your workpiece that's going to be, the tails are going to be cut into, like that, and clamp it down. Of course, the fingers aren't in place, so I can't get the height. Now it's all lined up. So now when I cut the tails and I cut the pins, everything's going to line up fine. What I've done is I put the 1/4 inch piece over here, and I've set up, I have to set up now the pins for this particular joint. Now, the drawer size and whatever, and a lot of the colonial pieces, they had symmetric dovetails, front and back. Some had more spaced dovetails, but the vast majority of them had symmetric dovetails top to bottom. So I'm going to set that up now. Same process as before. Scribe and mark the line. Set the bit to split that line in half. Bring over the dust collection. And now I'm ready to cut the first set of tails for rabbited dovetails. Now make sure that this is where it's supposed to be. Okay, let's solder on. The more astute of you will realize that I did not use a backer board on that, and I got a little bit of blowout here, but it is a test piece, so it's not like I'm going to build a piece of furniture out of it. And this is what I mean. Our ancestors built drawers mostly with symmetric dovetails. Some of the other exposed dovetails you would see on pieces that are facing the outside world would be staggered or varying sizes and climbing bigger to smaller at either end, whatever, or other way around. But the drawers were, for the most part, like this. So now, the next step is to flip this all around and then cut the tails. Unplug the router. One of the differences here in doing the half blinds in a drawer is I had to cut a scrap piece with the shoulder on it, and you want to line up the drawer front piece with that. So it matches. There we go. Got it up against the stop, and let's see. Okay, that's locked in place. Well, not quite. A little bit more. There we go. Whoop. There we go. That's better. And then take this piece off. And now, again, drop the fingers down. You know what? I'm going to support the fingers on the other side this time around. There we go. All right, so now we're ready to cut the pins. Again, make sure this is up where it should be. and put it in the dust collection. This thing is great. I mean, to have this to ride the router on, so you got none of this swinging back and forth thing. Let's set this up so it clears everything. Okay. All right. Get it in place, plug it in, cross your fingers, and hope for the best. Let's see where we're at with this. Swing the camera around this time. Let's see how we did here. Okay, it's a little tight, but and the what I've noticed here is that the tails, I mean the pins, are cut too deep, even though I set it to 1/2 inch. So let's do that again and see where we wind up. Well, that was kind of way off. I made an adjustment, a fairly gross adjustment. I needed, I think, 1/8 of an inch away inward to get this cut in the correct place. So let's try this again. And plugged in, everything's set where I want it. Yep, let's do it. Onward and upward. And that's got it. Now, you're going to notice some gaps down here. And what that basically means, actually needs a little bit more adjustment. Now you see we're getting there. So now I have to raise the bit a little bit to loosen the joint and move the fingers forward a little bit to bring the side just a little proud of the pins. So let's try that. Let's just see how that. Let's see what we got here. Okay, I think I know where we need to go with this. Okay, most of that was off camera because eating up space and time. Let's take a look again. Okay then, let's see how well we did. A few more adjustments. And we take the pin board and place it in there and give it some taps. That's pretty darn good. I see some more adjustments I have to make to get it as perfect as I want it, but there it is. Overlay drawer with half-blind dovetails. This is the prototype, of course. Wow, this video is a lot longer than I expected it to be. And there be the rabbit hole. Cutting half-blinds, both rabbited and regular half-blind dovetails. A couple of notes. You can do a lot of this with a fixed finger, fixed jig, non-adjustable. But with that, you have to cut your work pieces to the jig. If you want half tails at the ends, or top and bottom of the drawer, you have to cut your work pieces to the jig. With something like this, with adjustable fingers, this one, the Porter cable, there's a couple others out there, you set the jig to the workpiece and where you want the dovetails yourself. The other thing I like to advise people when they say, hey, I'd really like to get one of those, and I say, well, go ahead and get one of these, or one like it. But I highly recommend you cut some dovetails by hand first so you know, you have a good feel for what you're getting and how this is going to help you. So, dovetails, I got those ones done, pretty damn close. I'll sweeten that up over time before we get to the cutting the big ones. So until next time, make great things out of wood.